educator. She was born in Guerrero, Mexico. This is pretty fascinating. When she was 6, she and her brother migrated north to reunite with their family in Chicago. She was 6. I don't know how old her brother was, but she was only 6, and it was just her and her brother. Her name is Fanny Diego Alvarez, and her work in life, she says, reflects the constant struggle and joy of analyzing identity in a society where personal identity intersects with many nouns, race, ethnicity, and gender. They boldly stand out in Fanny's daily experience. Please welcome Fanny Diego Alvarez.
And I'm more healed. Thinking about that. So, I'm born in a state that's very small. Think of your smallest town and divide it by like 100. In the middle of like Guerrero, Mexico, born in my own house and where my father built it at home. No electricity, no plumbing, only a schoolhouse from like 1st to 6th, no doctor, only midwives. And I come from 3 generations of serial immigrants. They would come to the US, work for a couple of years, and go back home. The plan was always to go back home. And my grandfathers did that, my great-grandfathers did that, and my parents did that as well. And they actually met in Mexico and decided to form a family there. The plan was to stay there. But I also come from a family that people really fought for their rights, and this was rural Mexico in 1989. And one of my uncles had been called upon by different community members to run for office, and for many years he kind of politely was declining the offer, and eventually he kind of saw the need to step up and run for office. And once a family member decided something, the entire family decided something. And so everybody got on the campaign trail, and my uncle won. It kind of like a state representative role. Sadly enough though, this is 1989 in Mexico, in Guerrero. If you guys want to locate Guerrero, think about the 43 missing students of this past year, and that's where I'm from. And my father, his 3 siblings, a cousin, were murdered the day after my uncle won the election. So my mom, obviously, was very scared for us. And after a couple of other unfortunate events, she decided it was time to leave. And we left. And she left first. And my brother, who was 8 years old, and I, well actually my brother was 7 at the time, and I was probably 4 or 5, and we stayed back because she needed to save enough money to bring us home, which is Chicago now. And at first she saved enough money for us to cross over to California, sorry. And eventually she saved enough money for a flight between California and Chicago, and we were reunited with her for about a year and a half after we last saw her. And when we got to Chicago, we got to Little Village, and I don't know if you guys know Little Village, but it's like Little Mexico, right? And it's amazing. And I went to school, but sadly enough, if you guys are familiar with Chicago public schools, they don't do a pretty good job at bilingual education, right? And a couple of other things, but bilingual education, all of the neighborhood public schools, I work in them, okay? But bilingual education definitely suffers. And by the time I was in 6th grade, I couldn't read in Spanish. That was my native language, and I could no longer read in Spanish. They probably do a better job at the wealthier schools than they do in the South Side, where students actually know how to speak and write Spanish when they first begin school. And so I went through high school. I was undocumented all of my life. I graduated from Farragut Career Academy, and I was the valedictorian of my class, and I couldn't go on to college. I didn't have any papers. And that summer was rough. It was really rough. My stepfather had married my mother. He was a U.S. citizen, and he had applied for us. But after September 11th, things got very delayed. And I couldn't go on. I just didn't have enough money. I had a few scholarships, but I just could not afford the entire amount. And so we were kind of in limbo. We were waiting for some documents to be processed, and we were told that our meeting, which was outside of the U.S. in Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, in Mexico, in the U.S. Embassy, was November 4th. And so from the time I graduated in June till November 4th, I ran the risk that once I went to my appointment November 4th, I would have to stay in Mexico for 10 years. Regardless of whether my stepfather was a U.S. citizen or not, and the fact that my mom was a permanent resident at that point. And so I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I couldn't really write like I wanted to in Spanish. So I challenged myself to begin reading in Spanish on a regular basis. And I started with a very hot book, Como Agua para Chocolate. And I loved it. And I just reread it. My husband and I went to Mexico for 3 weeks, and I was like, this is exactly how I remember it. And you know, that entire summer I read a lot of Spanish literature, and my story is one that eventually turns all right, because I was able to fix papers and begin college and you know, and continue on with my life. But it always reminds me and humbles me that not everybody's able to do that. That a lot of our students have to stop after high school, or maybe even before then, because they lose hope. And so I really encourage you guys to be active around comprehensive immigration reform, and I'm on the soapbox. But I also encourage you to have a good time and read the book. Thank you.